This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Coveil. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. My guest today is Bobby Casey. Bobby has made a career of helping people essentially move to another location. At the end of our conversation, he will explain more about that detail, but all the different types of services that one might need if they were to live outside their home country. But that's not what our conversation is about today. Our conversation is two guys that have lived in other countries beyond their home country. Bobby happens to be American as well. But two guys sharing the experience, two guys sharing the push-offs, so to speak, the getting out there, doing something different. I think Bobby will be inspiration for those of you that are maybe looking for something different. Maybe you're tired of the rat race. He brings a great story for going abroad, for living abroad. None of this 2-week vacation crap. Cutting the ripcord and going. Without any further delay, let's jump right into my conversation today with Bobby Casey. I hope you enjoy. Why the F? How the F did you, and I'm thinking North Carolina, Southern boy growing up, how the blank did you get to Latvia to begin with?
Yeah, it's a weird story, but maybe it's just my strange views. I moved to Estonia first, actually. I had never been to Estonia at the time. I was married to my first wife. We have 3 kids together. I speak some Russian. I actually have a degree in Russian. My Russian grammar is it's much better than my speaking skills. I'm not very good at speaking Russian, but I thought, it'd be kind of cool to go live in a place, a former Soviet country, where I could practice my Russian. We kind of moved on a whim to Estonia. When I say on a whim, I mean, I'd never been there. I met one person who said they lived for a few months in Estonia and liked it. And I thought, why not? Let's go for it.
How old were you?
2009, 13 years ago. I'm 48 now, so I would have been 35, mid-30s.
Was the U.S. ticking you off or something? Or was this just literally, I've got this Russian background, this degree, I want to practice? Was there something about America in 2009? I do recall March of 2009 was pretty much the bottom of stuff, and then they QE to infinity. But was there something that was making you, about America at that moment, saying, I've had enough?
Probably a series of things happened there. I'd sold a company in 2008. I got out of a business I started in my early 20s. I had sold off other business things. Let's say in the few years leading up to 2009, I had a restaurant that I'd sold. I sold another service business. I sold all of my real estate except for my home, my residence in North Carolina, and I just liquidated everything. I just looking at things from the equities market, I was thinking, man, the pricing of the equity market's getting a little crazy. I want to go liquid. I want to get rid of some stuff. Also, business-wise, I was just burned out and fed up with my business, so I sold it. I was just looking for a change. I'm sure this is a big factor. I had a big motorcycle crash in 2007 where I almost died. I spent a week in and out of consciousness in the hospital. One of those near-death experiences where I thought, life's too short. I want to do all this shit I want to do, so let's go do that stuff.
The American wife and 3 kids and off to Estonia.
Yeah, I wanted to live abroad. A big factor for me was I wanted my kids to have an international experience. I don't mean going on vacation in Mexico. I mean, I wanted them to be culturally immersed, learn languages and stuff like that. I hear a lot of people say, Bobby, I could never do what you do. I've got kids in school. And I'm like, well, I had kids in school. No reason you can't do it. It's just you're choosing not to do it, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that, too, of course. I don't disparage anybody for their choices.
Deep down, there's a little disparaging there because otherwise, when it takes such an adventuresome path, if you thought the tried and true path of staying in America to learn pronouns and genders and whatnot, you would not have chosen this alternative path to the former Soviet republics. Come on now. I'm not asking you to be mean to anybody else.
Right. Let's put it that way. I do what I want. I don't really care what other people think. I had an event last week, a bunch of guys sitting around drinking, and I went to bed at 9:30, and they're like, I can't believe you're going to bed. I'm like, I want to go to bed. I do what I want. You guys want to stay up drinking and playing poker? I don't care. I'm going to bed. I do what I want. I thought this would be a good experience. What I was saying is a lot of people use their kids as an excuse to not do stuff. I mean, tons of people use their kids. Man, I would love to do this, but I got kids. I would love to do this, but I can't do that because of kids. And so many people use their kids as an excuse why they don't do things. For me, I just flipped it the other way. I said, I'm not going to use my kids as an excuse to not do something. I'm going to use them as a reason why to do something. Because, come on, the education system in the U.S., actually, probably most of the world, public education system, most of the world's complete shit. What do you think you're going to get a better education doing? Spending a year in some bullshit public school or traveling to 10 different countries, learning a new language and making friends around the world? Which one is really going to give you a better education?
I was late to the game. I did 6 months in London when I was age 25, 26 for my last semester of grad school. The whole time I was thinking, why did I wait so long to try this? And that whole experience set in motion me being in Asia now for a decade. These experiences are invaluable and they beat anything you might get in a classroom. And by the way, I mean, beyond parents using kids as an excuse, heck, people that don't have kids have all kinds of excuses. And everyone's got an excuse these days about why they need to be in the American system and they can't break the routine. They must repeat what their parents did and they must die the same way, something like that.
Well, the American dream is a bunch of propaganda nonsense anyway. I want to live in the suburbs with the white picket fence and 2 cars and 2 kids and play golf at the country club on the weekend. It's a trap. It takes away your freedom. You lose freedom living in those boxes. And I don't want to live in boxes. That's the main thing, is I don't want to live in a box. If I decide right now, I told you when we first got on the call before you started recording, I'm in Vilnius, Lithuania. Yesterday, I had some guys in town visiting me. We did a mastermind last week. Some of the guys, we were sitting around having lunch and we're like, hey, let's go to Lithuania. I said, all right. We jumped in the car and drove to Lithuania. So we're down here for a few days. I don't want to be in a box. If I want to go to Lithuania, I want to go to Lithuania. I want to do what I want.
You get to Estonia with 3 kids, American wife at the time. Something changed at some point.
It was kind of a cool story how we got there. I'll condense it. 3 kids. I have a girl and 2 boys. My oldest son, or my middle kid, him and I did kind of a little backpacking trip. We had one-way tickets to Prague. We flew into Prague, spent a few days. We went to Brno, Czech Republic, went to a motorcycle race, a MotoGP race, spent a few days there. But when we landed in Prague, the only thing we had on our agenda was our first 3 nights hotel stay in Prague. We didn't know how we were getting to Estonia when we landed. We didn't know anything, nothing of nothing. Basically, I just said, we will figure it out as we go. So we landed, spent a few days, went to Brno, spent a few days. We took a train to Warsaw. We just decided that looks like it's kind of on the way. Let's go to Warsaw. Spent a few days. We spent a few days then in Vilnius, where I am now. Same thing. We took a bus to Vilnius, spent a few days. Went to Riga, spent a few days, and then we went to Tartu, Estonia, where we were moving to. When we arrived in Tartu, the only thing we had, and I'd only booked it the day before, was 3 days at a hotel. Him and I landed, checked into our hotel. We went out the next day, and literally all we did for 3 days is look for real estate agents and look for an apartment, just to rent an apartment before my wife and other 2 kids showed up a few days later. That's it. We just walked around, and a funny thing happened. We were walking through the street, Central Square in Tartu. Him and I were talking in English, of course, and a woman came up to us. She goes, hey, you guys are Americans, in English. She was American also. And we're like, yeah, we're Americans. Got to talking. She was like, what are you doing for school for your kids? And I said, I have no clue what I'm doing for school for my kids. I have no idea. No clue whatsoever. She just laughed. She goes, my husband and I just found this school in town that looks like they're accommodating for foreign kids. There's a meeting there tonight. If you want to join me, you can. I'm like, All right. So we went and showed up, and that's how I enrolled the kids in school. Because my idea, and people like, oh my God, what did you do for school? How did you plan that out? I didn't plan any of it because the thing is, you'll figure shit out as you go. If I were to make the choice to move abroad, but I said, I'm going to figure everything out before I go, I never would have went. You know what I mean? I never would have got on the plane in the first place because there's so many details to figure out. You'll get paralyzed by, what do you call it? Analysis paralysis. You'll get paralyzed by trying to figure everything out. I didn't. I just said, let's go. Let's buy a one-way plane ticket and figure it out. And we figured it out. We found a school, put the kids in school. That's it.
I'll give you credit for doing it the way you did it, because when I went to London in my mid-20s, I did it like you, planned, but no plan. Just get there and figure it out. I'll finish school, whatever. Roughly knew the university that I need to get some credits from, whatever. When I did Asia in 2013, I was on this high-paid thing and all around all these 20 cities and whatnot, 10 plus countries. I'm embarrassed to think back to why did I need to have all of that to just go? I could have gone without that. And for some reason or another, maybe just that typical American brainwashing, here I am in my late 30s. At that time, I'm like, I just didn't see it as an option. Once I found myself into the trigger, that was like, okay, I'm woken up, so to speak. I appreciate that you were seeing it as an option. I needed a kick in the ass to do it.
Everybody has their own journey. And I knew if I went through the process of trying to analyze everything, it would take months or years before I did it. So I was like, just do it. Just go. We did, and everything worked out. It was fine. We lived there for about a year in Estonia. While living there, we decided we wanted to live abroad. We didn't really know where, but we decided we wanted to live abroad. And we had traveled a lot in Europe during the year we lived in Estonia. We had a house back in North Carolina. My wife at the time, her brother just house sit for us. He went and lived at our house. That was all taken care of. It was fine. We decided we wanted to live abroad, but we moved back from Estonia after about a year. It was just, well, now we got to liquidate everything. Sell the house, cars. I had a lot of motorcycles too. I'm a big motorcycle guy and I collected bikes. I had a lot of stuff to get rid of.
Let me put you to one spot. I don't want to go into why you have one marriage and it stops. What I really want to go to is the perspective change that you had when you came back, when you eventually make it to Latvia, and now you're a single guy. How much did your perspective change? Because, I see a lot of guys that will come into Asia. There's nothing wrong with it, but they got their wife next to them or their girlfriend next to them. It's a completely different situation as a man to come to a foreign country when you're a single guy.
I didn't go to Latvia as a single guy. I went with my wife and kids. We split in Latvia.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm getting at. At some point in time, you had the moment of like, okay, you've got your eyes for your wife. And at some point in time, that stops. And now all of a sudden, you're seeing Eastern Europe through a different set of eyes, correct?
Oh, I see what you're saying. I get what you're saying now.
It's a game changer.
Oh, yes. We don't need to get into the details of why my marriage split, of course. But I did move back to Latvia after selling everything. We moved with wife and kids and everything. Then we split 2 years after we moved there. Those points are relevant. But basically, we split. Then it was a game changer. Eastern European women are a completely different breed. They're amazing.
Now, of course, you just got banned off everything. I just got banned off everything, just off that one sentence. I'm joking, but I mean, let's really unpack that, because sometimes people might say in this modern world of everyone being offended and all this other kind of crap, you can't talk like that. You can't this, you can't that. The reality is you just said a very honest truth, a very simple statement. If it offends people, I know you could care one iota less, but damn straight, it's true. Try and explain that and unpack it for both men and women.
This is a funny story. So I am now married to a Latvian woman. I got married a couple of years ago, but her and I, last month, we were traveling and we came back to Latvia. We were walking on the street and she looked at me and she goes, because we'd been traveling in Mexico and in the US. And she said, looked at me, she goes, oh my God, it's so strange being back in Latvia because all of the women here are beautiful and dressed well. And I just looked at her and I said, well, it's a competitive game now.
She just got canceled and banned too. I mean, everyone's getting canceled and banned for speaking the truth.
Right. And I just laughed. I said, yeah, there's a lot more competition here. So you got to up your game, woman.
We're currently in the every third sentence Bobby is banned right now.
Right.
Part of the conversation.
But yeah, Latvian women, they're very different. I'd say the closest thing you can imagine is maybe an American woman in the 50s where they were much more traditional. They respected the different roles between men and women in the family and in the household. They're not trying to compete with the man. Now, I'm not trying to be misogynistic here and say women can't work or anything or that, but my wife and Latvian women in general understand that there is a difference between a man and a woman. There's funny things. We were grilling out. She's like, you need to do the grilling because that's man's work. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll do the grilling tonight.
Which is something I would have heard in the 80s when I was a young teenager.
That's very normal for her. It's very normal that she is more traditional in the female sense. She's very much in touch with her femininity. But the flip side to that is she also expects me to be a masculine man. I can't be, I don't know how else to put it. I can't be a soft androgynous male.
Band number 6.
Yeah, let's put it this way. If I were a soft androgynous male, we would either have never gotten together or she would leave me in a heartbeat.
I really don't like the imagery that you're leaving me with. You're a soft androgynous male. I don't even know what it is exactly, but it sounds frightening. By the way, very similar description I would give for Vietnam. And in fact, and maybe this one gets me banned, one of the favorite things of Vietnamese women in all of their illustrious 1950s, 1960s thinking with a modern twist is that if you do something that they think looks a little perhaps androgynous or a little, quote, metrosexual or whatever term you want to use, effeminate, they will just literally look at you and say, you look gay. They have to ban the whole country over here for saying that. But that's a completely normal, I'm back to the Seinfeld line, not that there's anything wrong with being gay. It is this interesting thing that captured the attention of both you and I.
My wife will tell me in a heartbeat, I'm in a bad mood or something, or I'm being grumpy and I'm not being what she wants me to be or something. She'll just look at me and say, hey, don't be a pussy. Like, she keeps me in check too. Be a man. If I'm not being masculine enough in the moment, I'm not doing something right, she'll call me out on it in a heartbeat. She has a high expectation of me being masculine because she's being feminine.
What percentage of American men have any idea about what you and I are talking about if they've not traveled, if they've not lived abroad, actually? It's more than just travel. It's living abroad because a 2-week vacation doesn't show anything.
You can do a 2-week vacation in Czech Republic and swipe right on Tinder and go on a couple of dates maybe, but that's not the same as living as a local and immersing yourself in the culture for sure. Percentage of men, I mean, it's low. It's got to be low. I know that because when I visit friends in the States, they'll tell me like, oh, you should come meet my girlfriend or something like that. And I'm meeting her and I'm like, maybe she's pretty or something, but it's a little, you know. Let's say the relationship is not properly balanced. Maybe that's a nice way of putting it. Relationship is out of balance. My wife, I mean, she works, but she doesn't think it's her role to provide for the family. She works because she likes doing productive things, but she'll tell you directly, it's not her job to chase a career. It's not what she does. If she were single, she would be chasing a career. But we're together now. We're married. She knows we're a team. We're a partnership. I have my role and she has her role. She works, but it's not her job to provide for our family and everything. That's my role.
With the amount of propaganda thrown, for example, at American men, I'm not so sure what they even think when they hear you talk. You sound like some guy from another world, another planet. It doesn't really register because you're saying so many buzzwords and sentences that are checking off of like, God, if I say that, I'm going to get banned off Twitter. If I say this, I'm going to get banned. Whatever is going to happen. My theory here is, I think I might have said this to you before, but I think if people had the chance to experience what you've experienced, especially men, and like I've experienced, they would not leave. They would not leave if they get a chance to truly experience what you're talking about in the flesh, because you're just giving your best description of it. When you're immersed in it, it's something that every bit of your sensations every day are completely changed.
Two comments I'll give you here. One is neither one of us are making a lot of friends on this podcast for sure.
I don't know what I'm doing talking to you. You're always trouble.
Neither one of us are making a lot of friends on this show. I'm sure you're going to get some upset people on this one. So be it. I'll give you one more comment. And this was such a beautiful comment. I know her, but I haven't seen her in a couple of years. But it's a Russian girl I know. She told me one time, we were discussing this topic. This has been years ago, but we were discussing this topic. And she said, why would I want to compete with a man? I don't want to be a masculine woman. Why would I want to compete? She said, I'm very feminine. I'm very comfortable in my role as a feminine woman. I don't want to compete with a man. I'm better than a man anyway. And I thought it was kind of funny the way she said it. She was just joking around with me. Eye roll, wink, wink kind of thing. But it was true also in the sense that why would she want to be in competition with a man in all the masculine roles when she could focus on her feminine energy and her feminine roles and be really powerful in what she is and comfortable with what she is. I mean, you look at it like this, even in the business world, if I'm a marketing professional, I should focus on marketing. I shouldn't be focusing on operations if I'm a marketing pro. I should focus on what I'm good at. And I think it's the same way in this case. Focus on your masculinity if you're a man, or focus on your femininity if you're a woman.
But for clarification, just so the audience doesn't get confused, I might have 3 or 4 wokesters listening. Can you define what a woman is?
I mean, it's hard to define. It's feminine energy.
There's a physical part too. I don't know if you need to draw a picture or something. I mean, there are diagrams that we saw when you and I were youngsters,
right?
Going through the dumpsters, looking at Larry Flint's 1980s work.
Right. I do distinctly remember the time when me and my buddy found his dad's stash of Hustler magazines back in the day, doing our research material.
Let's clarify here one thing, though, too, because I'm not trying to be super cavalier, nor are you. I think we're just painting a picture for a different culture, a different cultural thinking, different traditions than what is going on in America. I mean, everybody in America thinks what's currently happening in America is wonderful. Not everybody thinks this, but a lot of people think that this is all an advancement in America, that everything is going swimmingly. I mean, I've got a nephew who's a freshman at college. The first course he was taking this summer was about trannies. You got to shake your head sometimes. I'm not trying to be cavalier here. There's just distinct differences. And I think for your story, you're a guy and you have one experience in America, and I'm sure that experience was great for a long time. Something stops, something changes, and then all of a sudden the light flashes. You're seeing a whole different world. It's an amazing kind of midlife switch to have that light come on.
Yeah, but to rewind all the way back when we were talking about why I moved, one of the reasons I wanted to move abroad was so my kids could have an experience of a different culture. And me too. Also me, to have an experience of a different culture, because I think Americans, it's propaganda. We're made to believe that America, the U.S., is the center of the universe. Everything revolves around the U.S. and everyone wants to be the U.S. The global dream is to move to America, but that's not really the case. Culturally, there are dramatically different ways about how social environments and people live their lives around the world. I mean, I wanted to see that. I feel quite comfortable living in Eastern Europe in general because it suits me. Does it suit the wokesters? Maybe not. Maybe. To be honest, I don't give a shit. Suits them or not. It suits me. If they want to live their life how they want, go for it. I don't care how other people live their life. It's none of my business how you live your life. I know what suits me. But that sounds selfish. And I'm like, yep, it is, because I'm selfish.
There's a lot of cool lessons in these kinds of stories of leaving something like the so-called American dream and then finding out when you get over to the other side of the dream, well, there's a lot of dreams around this world, not just the American one.
Right. I don't even like to nationalize it like that. I have the Bobby dream. I don't care about the American dream or the Latvian dream or the British dream or the Chinese dream or the Vietnamese dream. I just have the Bobby dream, how I want to live my life and what I find convenient and comfortable and pleasing to me. Find your own dream. That's about not living in a box too. I don't want to live in that box.
You and I chatted about this some before. You and I have done this living experience, this deeper living experience. You and I have both had a chance to meet people. The term they're using these days is digital nomad, which some people might like, some people might not like. It can be interpreted in many ways. I think what's interesting about you, and maybe myself as well, is when you have this deeper experience where you put some roots down, it's kind of fun sometimes to when you start to bump into maybe other Americans or other Western travelers, other English speakers perhaps, that are also bouncing around. I think the interesting thing for me, and I said this to you before, is that your deeper experience really resonates to me. That's cool. I respect that. There's a lot of folks that might take the baby step of jumping in and saying, I'm going to go bounce around and do a little bit of nomadic traveling. They might not ever get to your experience. Not that they need to, but there's something to be said for jumping in with both feet, no safety net, going in deep like you did is an entirely different experience than doing, as you refer to it, and this could be the Caribbean, this could be South America, this could be Bali, this could be Thailand, some of the coconut characters, Philippines, that are just bouncing around. And, people will see these YouTube videos about how they're living with all these salty environments and stuff. But you didn't do that. I mean, everyone's had fun in life. I'm trying to draw that distinction that I think it's really interesting that people are listening, that you can go do some traveling around. You can go have some fun. It's quite easy in a lot of countries around this world. But something deeper happens when people go in both shoes like you did.
There's definitely a range on that digital nomad scale. I consider myself more, I call it a slow mad. I have a home in Latvia and I spend a few months a year here. I've got a place in the US. I spend some time there. The past 2 years, I've been spending a big portion of my time in Mexico, Riviera Maya side. I'm doing a little bit of traveling here and there also. This year, I've been to Denmark. I've been to Iceland, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, because I have a home there, several parts of Mexico, several parts of the US, 20 states in the US this year alone. Germany, Turkey, I forget. I'm on the road so much, but I consider myself what I call a slow mad.
Was that just a post-COVID choice?
Nah, I've been doing this for years. When COVID hit, when restrictions started coming down, my anarchist mindset said, you know what? You don't tell me I can't travel. I actually traveled more during COVID. I actually increased my travel during COVID. I don't think I consciously made that choice, but I just think it was my anarchist mindset that don't tell me what to do. I will travel more if you tell me I can't travel. That's just the way I am. It wasn't a conscious post-COVID choice. I've been traveling like this more or less for, 10 years or something. I call myself a slow mad.
I'm dying to go back to Tokyo. But Japan's been closed and they're still closed. They're publicizing that they're reopening. And here's how the current Japanese reopening is. You go through a tour agent. Through the tour agent, you buy your plane ticket, you buy your hotel and your food, all of this through the tour agent, and you need a visa to come into Japan now. That's not open. That's closed. That's not an option. I wanted to bring this up earlier, but it gets to your point about how you first came to Europe, not having all that planning. Because if you have all that kind of planning, you're going to experience something that is inauthentic, guaranteed.
Not having the planning, it forces you to be flexible and learn things as you go and figure stuff out as you go. It forces you to, because if you do all the planning in advance, pre-deciding on your course for the next 6 months or 12 months, okay, I'm going to live in this neighborhood. I'm going to rent this apartment. Okay, I'm going to do this and this. I'm going to put my kids in this school, or I'm going to do this or this. And you predetermine all that stuff. Well, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying what I did. Do your own thing. I'm just telling you, this is the Bobby life. I like to show up and figure it out.
Here's the fun thing, though, too. Sometimes these experiences can go a little bit awry. I remember the first time I showed up in Amsterdam. When I showed up in Amsterdam, went to some small hotel because I didn't know where to stay. I was in my 20s. The guy opens the door. Now, this is the first time I've ever been in Amsterdam trying to check into some hotel. The guy opens the door, the manager, and he's dressed like an obese Rob Halford from Judas Priest. Literally, this was his day wear, apparently. And I realized, well, this is not exactly the hotel I will be staying at. But hey, it's a funny story. So that's the fun part about all this kind of stuff, too. You never know what's going to happen.
I had a weird experience one time, too. I rented an apartment in Brussels and I showed up and it turned out it was a fucking closet in this guy's apartment. And it had one sofa that looked really terrible. I showed up at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night to check in. I didn't have any other options. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do this one night here, but then I'm going to go find something else. And the crazy thing is that was the sofa the dude slept on. He didn't even have a bed for himself in the apartment. And this guy ended up, when I showed up to check in, I'm just like, this is sketch. This is super sketchy. And the guy literally grabbed a tent and a sleeping bag when I showed up and he goes, all right, have a good night. I'm going to grab my tent and my sleeping bag and I'm just going to go sleep in the park tonight. I'm like, huh, okay.
I would have bailed on that one. At that point in time, apparently you had bad antenna at that point in time in your life.
Yeah, that one was a bad one. Yeah. It looked nothing like the pictures and any of that stuff. And you just show up. Well, it is what it is. And I mean, it was late. I showed up late. I'm exhausted. I just was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it one night and then I'm going on. And I did. That's what I did. I just went somewhere else.
Let me ask you a philosophical question about, for example, some of the European countries. Speak to the idea about how you would learn to care for the country, care for the people, versus a lot of travelers are just saying, where is something cheap? They're just focused on the cheap part of it. If something's inexpensive, that's nice. I know for me personally, being where I am right now, there's a real feeling, a real sense of belonging, community that I've developed. And I'm sure that's happened to you in various places in Europe as well.
Yeah. Not only Europe, also Mexico. Playa del Carmen, which is a very touristy beach town, I have a great community there. And I really like the entrepreneurial community in Playa.
Isn't Mexico still a narco state? What am I missing?
It's absolutely a narco state. 100%. Think about this. So you got narcos that kill other narcos for infringing on territory, or you've got governments like the U.S. that blow up brown people in tents with $1 million missiles over oil. Is that better? I don't know. You got cops that are killing people on the street selling cigarettes in New York. I don't know. Is that better?
We also have vast majorities of people killing each other beyond just the cops and their occasional killings. I know something about your perspective on the blue uniform, and I can't disagree on some instances. America's a pretty damn violent place to begin with right now in the inner cities.
Well, not even inner cities. I've never had a violent interaction in Mexico. In Greensboro, North Carolina, I did get jumped on the street downtown by 3 guys in what you would think is just a small, calm hometown kind of place. I ended up in a physical altercation with 3 guys in downtown. The U.S. is the only place I've ever experienced violent encounters in public. To go back to your point, you asked about cheap thing and all that stuff. I personally am not a fan of moving to a place or spending time in a place just because it's cheap. That's not my preference. I get why some people do that budget-wise, and they're a freelancer. Back to your digital nomad comment, they're what I call the coconut cowboys. They make like $1,000 a month, so they got to go someplace cheap, live a decent quality of life. And I get that. It's fine. It's a lifestyle thing. You want to live like that. If you're in your early 20s, that's great. I'm not early 20s. I make more than $1,000 a month. I don't like to go places that are super high cost of living. I don't want to go live in Oslo or Zurich or Singapore, for example, because I don't think those are any nicer than places with a much lower cost of living. I certainly don't want to go to some very low cost of living poor country, because if you go to a poor country and you've got some money, you don't even have to flaunt it. It's just obvious if you're a foreigner in that country, you have more money than locals. You're typically looked at as a financial target. Maybe you get robbed. Maybe you got people trying to sell you stuff. Maybe you got people trying to scam you. In some way, you're a financial target. Now, I don't like that. It's not a comfortable feeling. I don't want to live like that. I like to go places where you have a good bang for the buck. Eastern Europe is where it's at. I'm not interested in living anywhere outside of Eastern Europe. I've been asked this a ton over the past week. We did our mastermind in Latvia, so a bunch of guys are asking me, what other cities do you like? For me, if I were going to live in Eastern Europe, I'd live in Riga, I'd live in Vilnius, or I'd live in Budapest. That would definitely be my top three. There's others that are fine. Like Prague is fine. Warsaw is fine. But those are my top three. I'd live in Riga, Vilnius, or Budapest because you get a very high quality of life for a very reasonable cost of living. Not cheap, but a very reasonable cost of living.
To bring it back to the violence issue just for a moment, I would say that's probably one of the biggest reasons that I've loved being in Saigon. I've just never seen anything that looks untoward. I thoroughly enjoy that experience of having the feeling of no threat looming over my head or jumping out at me from somewhere. I'm a big enough guy. I'll handle myself. Someone's got a gun, someone's got a knife, whatever. So I just love the idea of, and I'm curious how that has felt for you in Eastern Europe. I mean, have you ever seen anything or experienced anything?
Nah, no problem.
Nothing.
Nothing.
Isn't that a fantastic story? Everyone in America reaches this point where they rationalize, justify, or just pretend it's not really happening. Whether someone is single or whether they're family, kids, whatever, the randomness. I grew up close to Washington, D.C. Back in the 80s. We did a lot of stuff that we never should have done. The randomness could have picked us off then. I love when you are so affirmative where you just say, oh, my experience with Eastern Europe, nothing. That's a wonderful statement. I wish that somehow or another we could get our shit together in America, so to speak, because it's just intolerable that we can't be exactly like what you just described.
I'll give you an example in Riga. Even a couple of the guys that have been here over the past week visiting, they were saying things like, this is crazy how safe the city is. The things you see that you know it's safe is you see at 1:00 at night, a single woman walking home by herself, a single woman. Or you see 10:00 at night, you see a group of young preteen or teen kids walking on the street at 10:00 at night. Like my kids, I didn't have a problem with my kids being out at night by themselves or with their friends. Just never anything happens. It's just never an issue.
An amazing statement on life that once again, as we have this conversation, that if people have not experienced this, they can listen to us, they can listen to our stories, but until you're on the ground and you feel that lack of threat completely, entirely, and it's not there, that's when it truly makes sense what you're saying and what I'm adding to.
If you want a big contrast, go to like downtown Los Angeles or even Austin, Texas.
San Francisco, you name it, San Diego.
Yeah. Most of your California cities, most of your Texas cities. Like I really thought, oh, Austin, Texas will be nice. Austin, Texas is a dump. In theory, I don't know. I haven't been back since then. They used to have tent cities of homeless people on the river.
They still have it.
Last time I was there was 2 years ago, and they did have it. Whether it's cleaned up or not, I have no idea. I got screamed at and yelled at and followed on the street, homeless people and stuff walking around in Austin. It was not a comfortable feeling. People talk like, oh, I love Austin. What a great city. My opinion about that is the people that say that is they don't know any better. They say that because they just don't know any better.
That's the point I'm trying to make. They just don't know any better. They don't know the experience that you're describing. They don't know the experience that I'm describing.
They rationalize.
Right. They've got their horse blinders on. They see what they want to see. They see what they can only see. Us human beings are kind of just like that. Look, I've already admitted to the fact that why was I late to figure it out? I was late to figure it out. I should have figured it out earlier.
You make a point about the horse blinders. I think most humans in general are a bit myopic anyway. We only look at our immediate surroundings and our immediate history. Not to take this in a too big of a tangent. When I mean immediate history, you hear people say things like on the crypto topic, this is just a silly example, but people say, oh no, we could never have cryptocurrency as a primary use for money because we use the dollar and that's the way it always will be. The reality is we've only known the dollar in its current form for 50 years. 51 years since 1971, Bretton Woods 2. But people are so myopic, they think, let's say they're 40 years old, in their entire lifetime, this is how it's been, therefore this is how it always has to be. They forget about the history of money and how it changes and different things happen. That's just an example about how humans are so myopic They don't think about history and they don't look too far to either direction.
The fall of 2002, the NASDAQ got down minus 77%. How many people listening right now can imagine the NASDAQ peak to trough going down 77% again? Hell, it could go down 90%. Who knows?
Right. So many people right now say, oh, that can never happen. You only have to look 20 years ago to see the dot-com bubble tanked and blew it up. It's not even that far back. We don't have to look that far back in history, but people still say shit like that can never happen because this is the way it is. And humans are myopic like that. I have some theories on that. I think people just don't take time to educate themselves and think, to be honest.
I know it's been a weird couple of years. You took advantage of it. I would have to say, for those of us that were based in Asia, it was a little bit harder to pull off the travel that you described. You can't even get into China. And even the Chinese, they don't want to leave because when they come back, it's a 21-day quarantine. I think it's 21-day quarantine to get into Hong Kong right now. That's insanity. Hong Kong, 21-day quarantine? What the hell?
Yeah. We left Latvia. So Latvia, like most of Europe, had a pretty strict lockdown for a while. We left Latvia. We were planning to fly out to go somewhere in a few weeks. This is back, I forget when this was, March 2020 or something like that. The Latvian government announced that they were canceling all the flights out of Riga airport starting Monday morning. So we bought a ticket to leave on Sunday. We got out on the last flight out to Istanbul on Sunday night, and we just took off. We're like, okay, we're not going to get trapped here, so we're out. We wouldn't exactly been trapped anyway. I could have just driven. I have a car. I could have just driven to another country and did some long-term parking and flew out from somewhere else. But we're like, nah, we'll just buy a plane ticket and leave tomorrow or the next day.
Completely unrelated. Have you seen the YouTuber Bald and Bankrupt?
Bald and Bankrupt? No, I haven't heard of that.
Anyways, guy that did all the former Soviet republics. Great channel. He just actually got banned, but he's got a huge following, hundreds of millions of views. Really cool stuff. British guy, speaks Russian, and he just goes to all the former Soviet republics and does off-the-grid type stuff. Talk to regular folks.
Awesome.
Yeah, great stuff. It made me think about your perspective in a way, though, too. Hey, listen, today we've not talked, and that's by design. We've just kind of had two guys having a conversation about travel, about living abroad. We've not talked any about your world. I want you to, at least for those people that kind of say, I like that guy, Bobby. He's kind of an interesting character. I might want to go have a beer with him.
Absolutely.
Where people can check you out, come learn about you and what you're up to. And maybe there's a way that someone listening that might be able to collaborate with you. Maybe they become a client, all kinds of insights that you might have beyond this conversation. Where can people find you?
I'll give you two contact places. My long-standing business, I do a lot of tax consulting for location-independent entrepreneurs, tax consulting, asset protection planning, privacy structures, that sort of thing, trusts, offshore companies, company structures, helping you sort out your situation. Like I have clients that are a German living in Thailand with an e-commerce business. And so we help them figure out how to optimize their structure, business and tax-wise, stuff like that. That would be globalwealthprotection.com. That's the best way to reach us there. We have a contact form. It'll shoot us an email, globalwealthprotection.com. My other business is, and this grew from that business, but I split it off as a separate company. We do company formations, registered agent service for company structures. We have a virtual mailbox product, virtual mailboxes for people that are location independent or for whatever reason you need a virtual mailbox, remote online notary. We have some other business tools we do for entrepreneurs, and that one's businessanywhere.io.
Cool. I'm sure some people will make it your way. We just kind of went over the kind of rough and ready, get out there and experience it. But if people do make a jump, there are some basics that have to be taken care of, so to speak, to pull it off. If you're American, you probably know that the Internal Revenue Service will never make your life easy, whether you live in America or not, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. It's funny. Everybody says, oh, Americans have to pay tax no matter where they live. And that's true. The U.S. is what I call a tier 4 country, which is a citizenship-based worldwide tax system. However, there are a ton of loopholes for Americans to minimize or in some cases eliminate their tax burden as a digital nomad or a expat, whatever. I mean, there's tons of opportunities. I'm convinced those opportunities exist because you got congressmen that don't want to close all the loopholes, most likely.
There you go. For those folks out there that are looking to jump, give Bobby a shout. Bobby, I appreciate you coming on. We'll have to make sure we get these conversations in every couple of years at the latest.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm in.
I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.